Well, all right, you guys. Good afternoon. This is going to be a quick video, I hope, on on uh, on GTII primarily, but well, not even primarily, but the purpose of this is GTII. But I'm going to talk about COSM, and I've just spent, I don't know, 3 days trying to learn how to do videos, more professionally with all the gimmickry that's out there, and I haven't been all that successful. It's learning, and I'm just frustrated. So I'm going to go with what I can do, I think, and show you. My goal today on COSM is to try to bring a little bit of perspective to the trade. I want to say that I'm supportive of the trade. I just this morning had to use the matches, and can you read that? Cosmos Club? That's here in DC, pretty prestigious club. But I reached into the drawer and pulled out matches, and that's what came out. So I see that as a real positive sign, really positive sign. I also, as you know, many of you know, live, I bought COSM, and I think I FOMO'd into it, and I traded out for a small profit, and I currently don't own any shares. But the two or three things, and I'll try to be organized in my presentation here, 2 or 3 things that I think has been a misunderstanding, and there's so much out there that's intentionally confusing, that essentially Wall Street regulars can take advantage of new retail enthusiasms, and I think there's a vulnerability here in COSM. I'll show you this. I saw this. It's pretty good. Sam Bankman-Fried. The virtue was the con. It's unrelated to what I want to tell you here. So I'll just start as these show up. I hope that I can, by the time I go through these, I can get onto some websites. But I'll go through the photographs first, just in case I screw up the websites. The 2 issues that I see that have confused people is this idea that in order for upstream to be a valid strategy, you need, quote unquote, the S1 to drop. And the second thing is oddly, you got the S1, depending on how you write that, and then you've got short interest, SI. So those are the 2 main things I want to talk about. I do not believe that COSM has anywhere near at least the real short position that's been bandied about. Now, just to be clear, I'm supportive of the trade. I'm not trying to be negative at all. There's enormous momentum behind this trade. But if you're in it for a short squeeze, I think it's important to ask some questions. And there's a gentleman I found on Twitter, which I'm sure you found, but let's just look. Here's the short interest that shows up. I don't know the source of this. I assume it's from S3, which I can't get into the website. I'm not a member, so I assume this is from S3. but the short interest is around 13%. Well, you know, in the case of GTII, the short interest that you see, the real short interest, or you go to the OTCmarkets.com, you get a really small short interest because a lot of the nefarious activity is done away from this real reporting. So I don't take this by itself as contradicting the idea that there's fewer than 2,000% shares to cover. Let me see if I took a copy of that. I showed you this picture of Lucky. Look how happy that little guy is. He's getting so old. All right, I don't see, unfortunately, I don't see, I can find it right here and show it to you, I think. Lou put up a tweet about the short interest in Cosmo, and I'm not saying he's wrong. I don't know, so this is just a question. And by the way, I give great credit to Lou and Avid and others to call out this trade from below 20 cents and sometimes significantly below 20 cents. So I'm not in any measure trying to I see it's so hard to find at something versus Wall Street. The way Lou versus Wall Street. It's just so hard to. How about Lou Bravo? I'm on Twitter trying to come up with okay. I'll do it a different way. I'll go to Cosmo. And maybe I'll be lucky and it comes up. But anyway, Lou put up a tweet that said that there was something like 1999%, and I'm just not finding it. So I'm going to quit soon because you get my point. And that's what I'm wondering if is actually accurate. Now, I'm not saying that he's saying anything wrong. I just think, as you will see, I think that the individual that put that number up, not Lou, the individual that created that number made a mistake. Now, I'm also not saying, all right, I can't find Lou. I'm also not saying that there's not a huge short position. You don't need 2,000% short to cause a squeeze. So that what I'm saying is not negativity, but I think what I'm saying to you guys in COSM is it might be a momentum trade or a trade that you take a profit, at least take your original money out, a money management trade, rather than a true, go to gazillion short squeeze. But this isn't financial advice. This is my opinion, and you have to make your own determination. I just have this one question. Okay, so let's look at two things. I got these in two different places, so it's not. I don't know where I think I just found this either on Twitter or anyway. I don't remember where I found it, but it's very similar to what I'll show you just now. So here is COSM, the historical outstanding shares and potential dilution. I'm not exactly sure what that talks about, but you can see here on the left, millions of shares. You can see from 2016 all the way up to currently almost, basically flat. But then there's an enormous jump to 180 million shares. Again, it's not necessarily bad. Okay, and then here, this is the short interest, is the total number of open short positions of a security. The short position when a company, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, it's interesting how this chart has almost the same climb. So, well, and then there's this guy on Twitter. You know a guy. There's this guy on Twitter who made this point. There you see his name, Tony Danera. And I don't know what's the best way to get. Okay, he shows, Tony Danero shows the most up-to-date shares outstanding as 178 million. And a bit of arithmetic is required to calculate free float. And then there's warrant exercise. And I did all this on my own. I spent last weekend, and then today and last night, I've been going through all the filings, and it's just because I'm not as quick maybe with these kind of things as others, but it is confusing. That's all I'm going to say. But here, free float is higher than 50 million, according to Tony Danero. Okay, so this high, let me see what this is. Okay, this guy, Ihor Dusaniwski. Sorry, that's a hard one. So they calculated this. Okay, so I guess it was at FactSet. I'll look that up next time. I didn't know where they got that data. They were using an outstanding float of 0.92 million shares, 0.92. So under 1 million shares for the float. So if you use, I'm getting confused. That would be the numerator, and you would divide by the denominator of the short position. But you use 0.92 instead of 50-ish million, you see in here, you're going to get a much different number. Now, again, I am not trying to throw sand on the story. I'm just suggesting to you that, and there's enormous momentum in this trade. So I'm not even saying anything negative about the trade. I'm just not sure that if you're basing the trade on 2,000% short interest, I'm just not sure that's an accurate number. So let's go on. Now this is from Will Mead. Now I went to Will Mead on Twitter, and I couldn't find any. There was, the reason I went to him, there was a question and then a response to his Twitter. So I went to him, and there wasn't anything there when I looked, which doesn't, maybe it's there now. Remember, I'm not a tech guy. But anyway, S3 data, that's where I thought it came from, S3. Just changed, now this is December 2nd. It's not too far ago. Today is the 4th of December. S3 data just changed their short interest on COSM to 13%. So 13% is a lot different than roughly 2,000%. Why such a drastic change likely? Because they made a recalculation of the float, which is what I just tried to, perhaps show. So so anyway, that's one of the things I wanted to get across. Now this guy, I want to point out, this guy, Frank Benedetto, number one, let me show you this. I just love this Save the Ocean. I think that's great. And just parenthetically to all you all is, and this is something I do. I'm not saying you have to, but if 300 million people in the United States did what I try to do every day, and I live in a city, so it's going to be hard for everybody to do it. But for a long time now, I'd say 2 years, that might be an exaggeration, maybe a year and a half. Whenever I see a plastic bag flying around, a clean one, I don't expect myself to pick up, wet, full of crud plastic bags. But if a clean plastic bag, somebody had a bottle of liquor, threw the bag out. Around here, somebody takes takeaway and sits and eats it and just throws it away. Or it got loose from Safeway or Giant Food. I pick it up, put it in my back pocket, and it's not that I collect them, but I bring them home, put them in a plastic bag, and then I bring them up to Safeway or Giant Food, and I put them in the recycle bin. And I try to pick up 3 bags a day. If you imagine that 333 million people, I know some are children, all picked up 3 bags a day, or 250 million picked up 4 bags a day and recycled them. Clean bags. Those bags don't go into the ocean. They don't go into turtles. They don't dissolve into microplastics that get into the food chain. Anyway, I like this, that Frank Benedetto does this. Now, I want to call your attention, followers, that the stock that Lou and Bill recommended at a good price, I guess it was Lou, Avid too, was Cosmos Holding. Under 18 cents is Lou, I think. And that's been a good trade. Look at the other companies that Frank is an IR guy for. Clear Vision Corp, CLNV, which many of you have asked me about. But one none of you have asked me about is TPTW, TPT Global Tech. So just keep an eye on those. Now, from Frank, the reason I put this up, the total float is 180 million. The free float is 153 million. And this is dated, it was 18 hours ago. I guess I just have to tell you, I pulled this up. Here it is, up in the corner, left-hand corner. I pulled this up at 8:41 Sunday, December 4th. Or, yeah, there it is up at the very top. So here's Frank's view of what the free float is, 153 million. Now, insiders own something, and I might have taken a picture, something like 43%. Let me see if that's here. There it is. So I can't confirm this with you because this is Yahoo, and no one where on here does it have the symbol. Well, anyway, this is my memory. I took this picture of COSM, and the insider holdings, which is excellent, is 42%. Now the float here on Yahoo is 57 million. So you go back to this guy. Nope. You go back to this guy. All right, so this is Frank Benedetto. 153 million free is what I got from the chief operating officer this morning. All right, sorry. Anyway, this other gentleman said, and I guess it's here, now I'm having a hard time finding it. I just showed it to you. Here it is, maybe. Anyway, he said that they had used for the short interest, maybe it's here. I just showed it to you. Anyway, they used under 1 million shares. So this is where this ratio of 2,000 versus maybe 11 or 13 gets out of whack. Now, you've got to remember that this is what's reported. There's all sorts of nefarious stuff going on. So there may be larger short positions out there that aren't even shown here. So that's why I'm not trying to be negative at all. I'm just trying to get in your head that this 2,000 number, I would take it with a jaundiced eye. All right, so now I showed you what he said. I showed you what he said. That's what she said. Anyway, fact sheet has a float at 0.92. So they based that enormous 2,000 off of a low amount of shares. At the latest S3 filing, according to Tony Denaro, and I went on and looked at it as well, a bit of math is needed. But here you see it, 178 million common stock issued and outstanding. And the CEO owns 11%, so that is really good. None of what I'm saying is it's just changing the ratios. It doesn't change the idea that this might be a good trade. I don't know what, cost to borrow is astronomical. Retail sentiment high. He's using 700% short interest versus 11% maybe. Okay, all right. Now, that's the first S1, SI, and then this is the second one, S Roman numeral 1, if I can find it. Well, let me show you a couple other things while we're here. I'm worried if I leave this, I won't be able to get back to it. This is the action in GTII recently, and I'm going to do a separate video on GTII, but I think we're at that line as support, and if you parallel that line upward, you get a pretty high run that we could go here in a, depending on where you start with this, but I'd go all the way up. I should have done it, but you see where the real peak is? Come down to where it's a little meatier, and then come over here to that $2. That's where I would drive that parallel, and then it gives you maybe a $10 target or so in the short run. But I wanted to show you this. A couple reasons I want to show it to you. One is we were all seeing this triangle pennant, and when you have a pennant, stocks, when they break out, can go to the moon or they can go down, and sure enough, this bear raid has been devastating to the downside. But it can snap back quickly. I mean, however, it'll probably take a little bit. You can see over here to the left in the sort of just above September, when it ran up and got crushed, it ran up again, came back down, and it squoggled, and then it ran. So you might have that kind of activity, but that's for a separate video. I don't want to get caught up on that. The thing I want to point out here is it broke below the 50-day moving average, and then broke below the 200 moving day average, and it kind of made you guys feel like bag holders. Well, this is the shorts knowing they saw the FUD on our Twitters. They saw the intra-scene bickering on our Twitters, and they came for it when they saw weakness. Now, nothing's changed in the story, and I'll do a separate video. I just want to show you, even though we all were believing much bigger prices, and I still do, the shorts were able to attack this stock quite suddenly. So I want to show you, this is COSM. Now, I drew that green line where I, as a non-technician, see a support. I see that the stock broke through and now is coming back to test that support. But what I don't like is that support is a long period of time. So can the stock just turn around and break out here without bouncing along that support a little bit longer? Sure, but it might not. It might take, I don't know, a couple weeks, a month of bouncing around. But I'm not predicting that. It's just a possibility. The other thing on this chart, this isn't a lot of trading history, and the history's all the way down. So I just point that out. Now, this is, I don't remember if it's 1 year or 6 months. I suppose it's a 1 year chart. And to me, it doesn't stand out like our chart. I mean, look at our chart. See this long triangle pennant fold forming, taking a longer period of time, and then it broke down? Well, this is the beginning, at least, of a pennant over here. I don't know what's going to happen as it plays out, but that's a long way down to the 50-day moving average. They don't have a 200-day moving average here, I guess, because it's so little trading. That's my guess, 200 trading days. But I drew a circle there up at around $1, a little above $1. To me, that's the resistance. It coincides with COSM's efforts at not having a reverse split. So that's the goal, I think, $1. And then this is an algorithmic chart. You see the high is over there around $4 on the left. So once it gets above 1, certainly it could go 2, 3, 4 and go off to the races. But what I'm suggesting for those of you fortunate enough to have gotten in earlier, this might be one to use really strong money management on, which is limiting your risk, taking 10%, 20, 30% of your stock off the table to either take your money off with that, let the rest run, or make a small profit and let the rest run. So I can see the excitement in the story, but looking at that chart, I can also see risk, is all I'm saying. Now, I don't know this story. Listen to Avid Trader, listen to other technicians that see something better here than I do. And I may get back in the trade. So I'm really not being negative. I'm just having a discussion. All right, so let me, I wanted to discuss discuss, I'm going to go through the photos first, because if I switch back to the internet, I might screw it up. So I just want to go with what I have here. I had a whole series of tabs I wanted to show you. But anyway, I want to talk about the S1. This is my second point, the S1, not the short interest. We talked about short interest, first topic, second topic, S1. I kind of want to clear up misunderstanding here, because the S1, it's been perceived that you need to see a filing of an S1 on GTII's part for the upstream to be really real. That somehow company's not staying in touch with you, the company's not updating you, even though there was a November 18th release. And I'll get into all that in a separate video. But here's what Upstream announced almost a year ago. Upstream Digital Stock Exchange offers dual listing for NASDAQ OTC market and international issuers. Upstream, the digital stock exchange and trading app, announced today that it will offer dual listing capability on the U.S. NASDAQ and the over-the-counter market. The dual listing grants issuers access to global digital-first investor base, which can now trade U.S. and international equities using USDC. I guess that's digital currency. Blah, 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 blah. That's almost the exact same words as the press releases in companies. And then he gives a quote. Okay. Here's what merge is and that story. So you can look up that story from December 15th if you go to Access Wire and click okay, here is what I wanted to bring up to you. Now this is an S3. And I guess I would call it a shelf offering or a preparatory filing. But when you look into it, on February 28th, COSM entered into a securities purchase agreement, blah, 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 for 6,000 preferred. See that? 6,000 preferred. The Series A shares are convertible into either $3 or this is Alarm Bell City, but I think they fixed it. 80% of the average price for the company's stock for the 5 trading days immediately following the day of effectiveness of the registration statement. In a typical situation, that's an open invitation for short sellers to come in and just destroy the stock. And that may have happened. I don't know. That might explain why the stock is down. But I think this was issued to the CFO. I saw him. And if I can get into the internet, I'll show you where you can find this, and we'll be able to determine that. So I'm not saying that's what happened here. Okay. Then they filed the registration on May 25, right? And they got average price of 0.62. The warrants exercisable, here it is, 110%. Well, I don't want to, they're using a Black-Scholes option. That's what everyone uses, but it depends totally on what you put in for volatility and length and price. They closed a private placement on February 28th that gave Series A shares. Okay, I don't want to waste time because I don't remember why I put this here. It's just to show that there was an offering. Now, this is what I want to show you. What is out there, dated September 1, is a preliminary prospectus. Let me just charge my hookup here because I think it's going to expire. So this isn't an S1, but it's a prospectus to offer 50 million shares of common stock, shares of preferred stock, warrants, units, subscription rights. It's basically a placeholder for anything the company wants to do. On October 3rd, the company entered into a warrant exchange agreement, blah, 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 blah. The new warrants are exercisable at 0.12 a share for a 7-year period. And then the participants have a right to invest up to 30% in every offering. That's not a bad, just on the face of it, that's actually a strong show of ongoing interest. It's also a way to anti-dilute. To not be diluted. Same thing. It's an anti-dilution clause in a way. But they have to pay, they have to invest to keep that way. All right, and then it goes on the February 28th again. It comes down to the warrants are issuable May 25. And then Black-Scholes again. Okay, the Series A shares rank senior to all companies' common stock or other equity securities. And some here it tells you how much it's convertible into. Might not be this picture. So I just wanted to show you the ranking of those shares. Okay, here it is. It's convertible into, as of November 29, which isn't too long ago, there's 53 million warrants outstanding, exercisable to purchase by the holders thereof up to 53 million shares of common stock. The exercise price down here is between 12 cents and 3.30. They don't really say, at least at this point in the document, how to break that down. All right, so they did a public offering on October 17th, and that was 7.5 million in securities, which I think insiders participated in, so that's a positive. But it was 62 million shares of common stock, the pre-funded warrant in lieu of shares, common stock. And this all gets confusing. And I didn't study, it's already a long video, I know. But there's a large amount of common stock out there. So it comes down here, 62 million common warrants and 62 million Series B common warrants were sold October 2022. So all of this is by way of saying I don't think that either the short interest or the percentage or the float are correct in the calculation from the original calculation from that S3 company. Okay, let me just go through what I wanted to say quickly, make sure I don't leave anything out. I'll try to go to the website, but I'm afraid I'm going to somehow disconnect all this and it won't be worth it. Okay, the one other thing to worry about, December 2nd, the company announced that the board agreed to look into a reverse split because they want to get over $1 on the NASDAQ. It looks like they're going to get over $1 anyway, but that's going to be a January event if they need to do it. And in my estimation, reverse splits just don't work. They'll start shorting it again, selling it again. And in fact, ultimately, the stock will be back to where the price was when they did the reverse split. In most cases, that's what happens. Okay, so I discussed the short interest with you. I'm skeptical of that 2,000% number ratio. I discussed that the S1, I know what else I wanted to say. As it relates to upstream, I can go find it if we can. Otherwise, I'm just going to tell it to you. As it relates to upstream, dual listing for GTII, in order to file or list an S1, there's a period of time you just quietly do it, which is confidential. But you cannot file an S1 and discuss your listing until you're approved for that listing. It just doesn't make any sense. So I don't want to say it's a canard, but it's a misunderstanding anyway, that because GTII has not filed an S1 relative to an upstream dual listing, that GTII is somehow not going to dual list. On the other hand, none of us know if the final approval is going to come in. But there's an approval process, so it makes sense that the S1 is not yet filed. Now, it's interesting. I looked up for Cosmo. There's rumors they're going on upstream. They haven't even announced it as best I can tell. In the case of GTII, they've discussed it at least 2 press releases, all within the last 60 days. So it's an interesting, contraposition there of a company that's actually announced its desire to dual list on upstream being compared unfavorably to COSM, who, as far as I can tell, have not announced it because GTII hasn't filed an S1 yet. Well, by like measures, COSM hasn't either. I personally don't think it matters. You have to get approved first before you can file an S1. So I think it's a big misunderstanding of the situation. The other company, CRTD, they have an interest in uplisting on upstream, and they have stated that they are going same process. But I looked, and I could have missed it, but I see no S1 filing there either. So it's just a misunderstanding. There is an enormous amount of momentum behind COSM. So this video I'm giving you is not to dissuade you and not to discourage you, because that momentum is self-sustaining. And so I'm not saying that won't carry it a long way. I don't know. What I am saying is maybe risk management. Take some of your money off the table as it goes up. Don't be diamond hands on your whole position. But again, that's not financial advice. Only you know your situation. So I think the real key here is what the short interest really is. Obviously, I spent most of the video talking about it. And I think the risk is, there's a couple of risks. I think when you're a public company that hasn't had money in a long time and you have an offering as a shelf registration, I think you might pull the trigger on that. Might not be at $1, might not be at $5, might be at 10 or 15, who knows. But it certainly becomes a cap on a squeeze if it happens. What's good about it is it makes it a good, if you like the company, it potentially makes it a really good long-term investment, and that's all good. The other critical thing is you do not want this stock to do a reverse split. If that happens, I would take the opportunity to lighten up. Now that's in January. All right, I'm going to see if I can go into some of these websites, but I have a feeling I'm going to miss it. So if I make a mistake, thank you for watching. This is COSM, but it's the reason I'm coming on. A lot of the GTII investors are in COSM. I wanted to give a couple of thoughts. I don't know the story of COSM. I don't have access to anybody there. And I traded it. But I just wanted to give a couple of thoughts on where I think there's some misunderstanding or confusion. And when I compare GTII, COSM, I can't condemn GTII. I guess that's my conclusion. And COSM is a monster. It's a bear. It has huge momentum behind it. So I'm not trying to be negative. Let me see if I can do it. If not, I'm going to say good night. See, I can't. I just may not be able to do this. You think you're so smart. You think you're so smart. Okay, I guess I'm just not going to show you the websites in this video. So thank you for listening. Great trading. And just to look at Cosmo one last time, that I can see all sorts of reason why that's a positive chart as well. You've got down below, you've got a good MACD, I think, and you've got volume increasing while the stock's going up. I think that's good. It's normal to hit a little bit of resistance here. I would not be surprised to see it have to test that sort of 70-75%, 80 range one more time and come back before then it went right through. My experience, it's usually the fourth time when you have a little resistance that it goes through. But that's not huge resistance there. Where I circled in the loop-de-doop, I think there's more resistance. And that's the 1 to 125. That's a nice trade from here. Really nice trade. So anyway, happy hunting, and ciao.